Welcome to the Tombstone Gold Belt webinar. It is my pleasure today to introduce 4 companies that are active in the Tombstone Belt. My name is Dr. Quinton Hennigh. I'm a geologist, exploration geologist, background in gold. And all of the folks on this webinar are well-seasoned explorers in the Yukon. They're all very, very sharp folks that have made discoveries or we'll call it are on their path to making discoveries in what I think is one of the most exciting gold belts, gold districts that's opening up in the world right now. The Yukon is a very prospective location for a lot of metals. Gold is certainly one of these metals. There's been recent mines developed. For example, the Eagle deposit belonging to Victoria was commissioned just a few short years ago. It is producing gold now. It's a major new development, but you're also seeing other stories come to play. Mining is becoming more and more active, especially operating mines are becoming more and more active. Like you see Hecla, for example, at Keno Hill, after their acquisition of Alexco just recently. I think it was last year sometime. And you also see moves being made to consolidate land positions. Hecla also picked up ATAC, which has a large land position over the Rackla Belt, which is really part of this geography that we're going to talk about today. So you're starting to see the foundation, we'll call it, for a very large scale, district scale, we'll call it, metal exploration story unfold, but also production story unfold. And these particular deposits we're going to talk about today, these what are known as tombstone type gold deposits, also known as reduced intrusion related gold deposits or gold systems, these are a key part of this story that is currently unfolding. All of the companies that talk today are going to tell you about their reduced intrusion gold systems, and I think give everybody a flavor for what they might discover here. Now, let's dive in. Let's give everybody a little bit of background about the geology of this style of system and why it is so important for these discoveries to be made. Okay, here you can see a map showing the Tombstone Belt. And you might say, that looks like the Tintina Belt. Well, you know what it is. It's a subset of the Tintina Belt. The Tintina Belt, like we geologists, we like to give, different domains, different names. Tintina Belt is really a structural zone that continues from the Yukon all the way over into Alaska. It's along a major structural corridor, the Tintina Fault being a big part of that. That's a big linear feature that you see there. And yeah, it hosts a lot of gold deposits. In fact, over in Alaska, there's quite a few more. But here in the Yukon, we have a belt of these particular tombstone type granites, these reduced intrusives that seem to be prolific in hosting big gold deposits. Okay, now the location of the companies that are going to speak today is shown on this map, but there are other stories that have unfolded. Like I mentioned earlier, the Eagle deposit, which belongs to Victoria, is just a wee ways north of Banyan over there in the green. Okay, so there are operating mines in this particular type of deposit style now in the Yukon. And I think it's really just the starter for something that's going to become a major gold camp over the next few years. The gold mining industry is in a very interesting space right now. If you look at the major miners, their resources and reserves are depleting. They're continually depleting. And I think if you look at any major gold mining company, if you went back and you looked at their reserve and resource statements back in, say, 2004, so 20 years ago compared to today, I think you'd see what I mean. Their ounces have gone down, like their total reserve base generally is drifting lower. The quality of the reserves is drifting lower as the grade decreases overall. We need a new generation of gold discoveries to really propel the gold mining industry forward. And if you think back to the cyclicity of gold and when discoveries were made, we had just an absolute incredible run in the 1980s, early 1990s. in which belts were opening up. For example, the Northern Nevada Carlin story unfolded, and we saw one discovery after another, just one successive discovery after another. Some of those discoveries led to the formation of what are today some of the big gold mining companies. You know, Newmont's been around a long time, but it was really the gold story in Nevada, in Carlin, that made them what they are today. Same with Barrick. You know, Barrick acquired the Gold Strike property, became a major gold company on the back of that. You know, that's the kind of model we need to see unfold here, where we see world-class tier one assets discovered and built into mines, because this can be the ground zero for the next generation of gold deposits that the industry needs so badly. And so I think, you know, for listeners, I think it's very important you pay attention to these stories and understand that this is where these opportunities lie. And it's really where the future, at least, you know, in North America, where the future of the gold mining industry is likely headed. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about these reduced intrusive related gold systems, these deposits, and how they form. Most of the cartoons that you find on the internet are fairly schematic, fairly simplistic, and they show in a very broad way, you know, what these systems are. In this case, these deposits are related to magmatism, basically molten rocks that come up from deep in the ground. They usually rise and form a magma chamber at depths of, say, 10 kilometers or more. Sometimes it's even more, maybe 20 kilometers in depth. But these large volumes of molten rock that kind of come up and then park themselves deep in the crust, they start to crystallize, and you know, certain minerals start to fractionate out. They crystallize and precipitate out, and that means the residual melts that are left, the material that's left, usually has a lighter density. Okay, so as that happens, those magmas, those residual magmas, actually start to rise up, and you get these apophyses, these little fingers trying to poke their way up and rise as closer to surface as time goes on. There can be multitudes of these things, and the scale of this is really, really super important. That big magma chamber at depth can be expansive. Okay, that thing can be, you know, a few 10 kilometers across. It can be 100 kilometers across. It's a very, very large reservoir of molten material. So you can actually get a district scale play where you have multiple apophyses, is what we call them, rising up off of this thing. And each one of these latter melts, these late stage melts that comes off of that, tends to carry goodies. Why? Because things like gold and, you know, other elements that are associated with these, like bismuth and tellurium and whatnot, they're not compatible in the melts. Okay, they don't, like those elements, that gold cannot, you know, go into a mineral that's precipitating out or crystallizing out of a magma at depth. It tends to get concentrated into the residual melt. It doesn't have a home, so it stays in the molten material, and therefore the subsequent magmas, these late stage magmas, can have a lot of metal dissolved in them, and as they come up and they start to cool and solidify, that gold gets even further redistributed. Why? Because there's usually a little bit of fluid associated with these melts. You know, water and carbon dioxide and other things come off of these melts as they crystallize. You know, at different levels within the crust. You can get deep ones. You can get stuff forming 10 kilometers down. You can get some that are kind of, you know, somewhat shallow, maybe like 5 kilometers or even near surface. Okay, you can see these things manifest themselves all the way to the very tippy top, to the crust where we're at. Okay, now, why is this important? Well, these magmas, they contain a lot of metal. You know, oftentimes these things can contain many millions of ounces of gold, but also other metals too, bismuth, tellurium, arsenic, you know, antimony. I mean, there's just a whole suite of metals that can occur with these. The magmas tend to be reduced. What the heck does that mean? Okay, well, reduced versus oxidized. In chemistry, if something is reduced, that means in general it lacks oxygen, it lacks free oxygen. Okay, so these latter melts, they don't have a lot of oxygen. Now, why is that important? Because that means that gold, things like gold, which like to travel in a reduced environment, can come up with those magnets. If If this was an oxidizing magma, the gold would probably be precipitated. It would be like, I think I'm just going to stay down here deep in the crust, and we'd never see the light of day. Okay, but in this case, these magmas are reduced, hence the name reduced intrusive, related gold system. And those magmas can carry that gold straight up, and they can carry many millions of ounces. And that's what makes these things very special. Okay, the endowment of these intrusions and the gold deposits they can form can be tier one assets, mega deposits that basically will generate mines that can last for many, many years and produce large volumes of gold. Makes them very attractive. There's other features that make these attractive too. For example, the chemistry of these is often low sulfide. Okay, interestingly, even though it's reduced, and you would think, oh, that should mean it has a lot of sulfur in it. It's not usually the case. Okay, the level of sulfur or sulfides in these deposits is quite low. What does that mean? Well, it means you don't have a lot of potential for acid formation when you're mining this stuff. Okay, that's a very friendly aspect. The other thing that's important, these deposits can often have things like carbon dioxide. Like I said, carbon dioxide forms the basis for minerals that we call carbonates. Calcium carbonate is calcite. There's other carbonates, but those carbon dioxide bearing minerals, carbon and oxygen bearing minerals, those are very neutral in their behavior chemically. Okay, if they're at surface, they don't weather, they don't produce acids and stuff like this. They're very friendly. In fact, they even help neutralize acid should it even form. Okay, so these things, not only are they friendly in terms of the endowment of gold, they also tend to be friendly in terms of the type of deposit that you produce, the mine that you produce. And environmentally, these are not so bad. These are pretty darn good. I think that makes them very attractive to major mining companies. Okay, there's a lot more I could go into here, but I'm going to jump to the next image to simply show you the zonation and kind of a context for how these occur. Now, there's a vertical zonation. You can see the little elements scattered on each name here. Like I said, you can get systems that are deep, you can get systems that are shallow, and depending on where they form and how close they are to the magma source, you'll get different elements distributed in different places. But we're going to look at it from the perspective of a plan view, like looking at like a bird looking down on a system. Okay, and what we're seeing here is a plan view of one of these reduced intrusive related gold systems, where you have a magma. In this case, it's exposed through erosion, probably. That pink blob that you see there, that is a blob, one of these apophyses that stuck its nose up and is actually at surface. Okay, that's the mothership. That's the source for the metal. That's the usually often where the metal is deposited, usually in fractures and faults around the margin of it. That's a great host, okay, or a great target for these companies to be looking at. But you can also get metal stepping out from that, away from it. Okay, sometimes the fluids, as these things come up, they crystallize, the fluids can migrate out and they can carry metals outboard from the intrusion itself. Usually what we see is in the intrusion, we see gold, bismuth, tellurium, and sometimes tungsten. That's the W. Okay, as we go outboard, we usually see gold and arsenic travel together outboard from that. Even further out, you might get into gold, arsenic, and antimony. Antimony is a different metal, pathfinder metal, but you can see it even further out still. And then way out at the fringes, you have things like silver, lead, and zinc on the distal expression of one of these systems. You can also get different effects when you have these magmas come into contact with reactive rocks. For example, up there in the upper left, you'll see that the magma in this schematic drawing has come in contact with limestones, which are carbonates. Okay, they're bedded carbonate deposits. And oftentimes the heat from that intrusion cooks up. It reacts with the limestone, makes metamorphic rocks, thermally metamorphic rocks, basically cooks them. And you can get some of the mineralization going out into those. You can form what we call skarn deposits, and the gold and other metals can end up in there too. Okay, so this is a very schematic picture of what we're looking for. Now, when you're looking for one of these systems, and you collect rock samples and you say, oh, geez, there's a bit of bismuth and arsenic, or sorry, antimony and arsenic here. Well, you're kind of out on the fringe. You then can use that as a vector to point you back into the mothership, which is really the intrusive itself. Okay, so that's the way us exploration geologists like to think. We like to think about the zonation, the chemistry, and how it points back and vectors us into the discovery. Now, that's a very fundamental picture, very basic picture, I should say, of these types of systems. These guys are going to tell you more detail about each one of their projects. But before I hand it off to Simon here, I'm going to talk about what can these deliver. Okay, now this mine that you see right here, Fort Knox Gold Mine, it's not in the Yukon, okay, but it is one of these reducive intrusive systems over in Alaska. Like I said, the belt continues on, or the Tintina Belt continues on into Alaska. This Fort Knox Gold Mine is really the deposit that defined this type of system. If you look way back in time when it was discovered in the 1980s, everybody was just blown away with the fact that you could have a big scale gold deposit hosted by granites. And the reason they call them tombstone is because the granite looks like tombstone, like on your grandma's grave. Okay, that's why we call them that. So this was really where tombstone type gold deposits were defined. At least Fort Knox and the Yukon were where these things were first defined. And why I show this picture is because look at how massive this thing is. Okay, this thing has produced 9 million ounces, or just over 9 million ounces today. Kinross operates it. Over the 28-year, I believe it is, mine life. I actually went there in 1996, shortly after they opened. It has produced 9 million ounces. That's over 300. That's about 325,000 ounces of gold per year on average. Okay, on average. Early days, it was actually cranking out, I think, on the order of a little over 500,000 ounces. It's back, down to like 225 or 250,000 ounces per year at this point. But these things are monsters. Okay, these are tier 1 assets. They're very environmentally friendly. They're basically ideal gold mines for major mining companies. Okay, now with that, I'm going to shift over. I'm going to advance, but I'm going to pass the baton here. I'm going to also ask that everybody else turn your video and mic off for the time being. We'll go through this one by one. Simon Ridgway, I've known for many years now, absolute brilliant explorer. He got his start prospecting here in the Yukon, okay? He knows the Yukon quite well. Rackla Metals is his vehicle here. For background, Simon founded Fortuna Silver. I think a lot of you probably recognize his name there. So, I'm going to hand it over, and I'm going to interject from time to time. Simon, I hope I don't annoy you, but I'll let you tell your story.
No problem. So Rackla Metals is kind of the newcomer to the belt. As Quinton pointed out, I've been worked up and on in the Yukon for many, many years. Lived in Dawson City for quite a long time and explored in these tombstone intrusives at that point. But when I saw Snowline's results a couple of years ago, I decided to get back into the belt again and start looking for these tombstone sweet intrusives. And we began looking at the Yukon Northwest Territories border. So the camp we put in here is in the Northwest Territories. It's on the Canal Road. It's road accessible to the camp. We're about 240 kilometers east of Ross River. We have an airstrip beside the camp, and we put in a multi-year camp, as I was pretty optimistic that the area I was looking was going to be prospective for these Riggs-type deposits. And here, although the camp's road accessible, we're working in these hills off to the left-hand side of the picture there. So we got a multi-year camp built, we got road accessible, airstrip accessible, and we're probably about 5 kilometers from the prospects that we're working on. So even though they're not road accessible, if we make the discoveries that I'm hoping for, we'll be able to put a road in there quite easily. So here's the usual, qualified statements, forward-looking statements. And this is where we are in the belt. So we are basically pushing the Tombstone Gold Belt into the Northwest Territories. So as Quinton put it out, it's in Alaska. It runs all the way across the Yukon. And some of our recent discoveries are right on the border of the Northwest Territories and the Yukon Territory. We will take a closer look at those right now. So these snowlines, what Snowline is called the Rogue Plutonic Complex, is located here. We're about 20 kilometers east along the belt, and we've named this belt of intrusives here the Astro-Plutonic Complex. So these pink blobs, as Quinton mentioned them, are these are the intrusives that are coming up through the sediments in the area, and this line down here is the border. So this was our first year was last year in the belt, and I think we made two very interesting discoveries in that first year in the play. I think we did a fantastic job. The team I have working did a great job of getting boots on the ground inside these intrusive bodies, inside these blobs, and making some interesting discoveries there, which we'll take a closer look at right now. So again, we just close in on those three blobs on the right-hand side of that previous slide. And the two discoveries we've made are the peak and the hit. And we'll take a look at those in a second. But so the pink blobs are the intrusives, the green is the alteration aureole. Excuse me. Around those intrusives, they create some metasomatic alteration in the sedimentary rocks around these intrusives. And previously, although these areas were explored for gold, the intrusives themselves weren't. Most of the work was done in the sedimentary rocks, looking for Carlin-style mineralization, or the rocks around these intrusives gets very gossinous, very, very altered, and the intrusives themselves are very tombstone-like, very boring-looking granite. So often the prospectors, geologists did not walk inside these intrusives very much prior to the tombstone, these rigs deposits being well known. So this is the ground position we acquired. I optioned these projects from other companies, but now we own 100% of all of them, subject to some NSRs, 2% on each of the projects, or 2.5%. Otherwise, we own the prospects 100%. And I think we got up to a great start and made a couple of very interesting discoveries. In the peak, a drill discovery, and in the Kelvin stock and the hit property, and the peak discovery there. It's very exciting, but it's undrilled at the moment.
Okay, before you jump on there, I'm going to point out there's a light shading in the background, Simon, and you call this the Astro-Plutonic Complex. Basically, that boundary that's very hard to see, but it's kind of a light gray that goes around. That would be would you say that that's the footprint of the buried magma chamber at depth? In other words, these pink blobs are the surface expression of a magma chamber at depth. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, that's what we believe. That's what we believe to be the case. Hence the name, the Astro-Plutonic Complex. And we do see in the geophysics we've done that there's some smaller mag lows out here in the valleys where we think we need to do some further work, because I think they're all related at depth, and some smaller intrusives may exist out here that have not been mapped in. They could be very prospective, and some of the geochem seems to indicate that. So what we're looking at here is a stream geochem map of the area. Some of this was done by the government, some of it by previous operators, and many of it by us. When we began to close in on these anomalies that were previously identified, we did a lot of more detailed stream sediment to try to identify the areas within these intrusives that we should be getting boots on the ground and following up the stream geochem. And some of these are very strong. I mean, from the Kelvin stock here, we've got over 500 ppb in the stream sediments draining this area that we call the peak discovery, and something very similar up here on the hit. So by this stream sediment work, we identified the areas within these intrusives to get hiking, get boots on the ground, and get people prospecting. And that worked very well. And some of the country is quite steep, so we had some very young active geos on the ground here, and they did a fantastic job. So we'll jump to the first one, the hit discovery. So as we identified the areas of the intrusive to start prospecting, the plan was to identify the areas where we find sheeted veins on surface or good gold numbers on surface, and then put a couple of drill holes, basically prospecting with the drill once we found that sheeted veining to try to find out we got some graded depths. And we put 5 holes into this stock here on the areas we identified. We got some good rock samples. We had some good numbers in the rocks and in the soils. We used an XRF machine because the turnaround time to get soil results in the Yukon was very long. So the XRF worked exceedingly well to identify the associated minerals, the bismuth, the tellurium, the arsenic in the areas where we found the sheeted veining. So we put 5 holes into this intrusive, and 2 of them hits 3 and 4 hit broad zones of sheeted veining carrying gold. So I think we've made a Riggs discovery here. The grades are fairly low, but actually the grades we hit in some of these holes are the grades that are being mined at the Victoria mine in the Yukon, way further to the west. So in the hit 3, we got 130 meters of quarter gram, and in hit 4, a bit further deeper down, we got 50 meters of half a gram. So I think we're on the edge of a Riggs discovery here. I think we need a lot more drilling in this area. And here's your schematic of the reduced intrusive from the big batholith at depth. This is where it's outcropping at the hit property. And this is where we got a couple of holes in that show we're getting sheeted veining with reasonable gold numbers. The target is a lot more drilling downslope of that to the north and to the northwest and down under these sediments. So I think we have a pretty exciting discovery here of a rig system. It needs a lot more drilling. That'll be the program for the upcoming season. Given that we got the camping, I think we can get started a little earlier than last year, but probably still be June before we get a drill turning on the property. Now, about 11 kilometers to the south. Excuse me, when I talk a lot, I get pretty dry. So 11 kilometers to the south, we got the Peak discovery, another one of these intrusive bodies that's outcropping with a nice aureole around it. It had been looked at previously in the sedimentary rocks around it very briefly by a couple of operators over the last 20 years, and I identified a couple of anomalies in the area that we followed up on. The stock itself is about 2.2 kilometers, square kilometers covering the area. And we had some very, very strong stream geochem draining the eastern side of this intrusive stock. So that's where we focus our work. And here's we got a lot of very good rock numbers just off what appears to be just off the side of the intrusive in the sedimentary rocks. But what we've seen from the MAG we did, the airborne geophysics, is that this intrusive the MAG continues showing that this intrusive is probably pretty shallow under these sediments. It probably joins up with the Peak outcropping here where we got sheeted veins with gold in. But some of the numbers we've got from the sheeted veins in the sediments have been very good, up to 17 grams, multiple multi-gram samples in sheeted veining in the sedimentary rocks. Gold arsenic with lower bismuth, but still fairly strong bismuth numbers coming up in this. So this is a very exciting target.
So right there, that's a great example of the zonation we just talked about, like just outboard from the gold bismuth tellurium, which is central, the core of the thing. You
Right.
get a little bit more arsenic, right? And what you're saying here,
rocks with very strong gold numbers.
yeah. So you're saying that like that quartz arsenopyrite, ASPY-AU, that's basic arsenopyrite, bit of arsenic, and gold. So you're just outboard, but it's probably telling you have a big reduced intrusive system, maybe immediately underneath that green stuff.
I believe so. Given what we see from the MAG, we're showing that these two intrusive bodies are connected, with probably pretty shallowly underneath. So this will, early in the season, we'd probably get, depending on the snow, we get the rig here first and put 10 holes into this, and then take the rig over to the hit discovery and start drilling there, waiting on these results from the drilling here. Also, further up in the cirque, we got there's a whole series of sheeted veining breaking up the intrusive at the top of this, along this ridge here. We took a series of soils late in the season along the bottom and got some very strong soils at the base of the hills. So this is a target that's got to be looked at as well. This isn't drill ready yet, but I think we'll work this up over the season as we're waiting on the results of the drilling here. Very exciting target, I believe, this project. Some, as I said, multi-gram at surface. Never been drilled. Again, here's the model. So I'm just showing as you said, the big reservoir at depth, the intrusive coming up. We got the sheeted veining up in the cirque on the side of the intrusive. And here, I think this little hill here should be good to change this model and put it in to be part of the intrusive when it's just shallowly at depth under here. We expect to cut the sheeted veins in the intrusive just below the sediments. Getting these kind of numbers, we're very excited by this target.
Awesome.
That's pretty much it. This is the capital structure. We got 71 million shares out, 17 million warrants, quite out of the money. Even though I think we had a very successful year last year, the market obviously punished us for it. So we're trading very low right now. So these warrants are out of the money. We have some cash in the treasury, but we'll be raising 2 to 3 million to do a significant program on both of those intrusives starting in June.
Okay. On that note, that's an awesome story, Simon. It's a bit earlier stage than some of the others that we're going to hear today, but it's no less potential. Okay, like the targets that you just showed, either one or both of those could be significant new reduced intrusive type gold systems. If people don't understand the meaning of that, look, to give you a perspective, at Snowline, for example, the peripheral mineralization, or even Eagle or Fort Knox or wherever, the peripheral mineralization often grades, 0.2, 0.3, 0.5 grams, somewhere in that range. And you're already seeing those grades in your first round of drilling. And that's that's true wildcat drilling. It's very,
very exciting to get those results on. Yeah, it was wildcat exploration, but that's what these short seasons in the Yukon demand, right?
Exactly. But look, you have no less potential. I think it's an exceptional story. I would encourage people to type in the chat window if you have questions. I'm not going to address questions right now. I'll wait until the end of the whole thing after everybody's done. But we will loop back and we will go through questions, maybe 1, 2, 3 questions per company at that time. If you have questions for Simon, type them in the chat window. We will get to them. Awesome story. Thank you so much, Simon. All right.
Bye.
All right, Scott Berdahl, are you there? There we go. Cool. I love technology. All right. So it is a delight to introduce Scott Berdahl, who is a CEO and also the director of Snowline Gold. Known Scott for many years. I've also known his father, Ron Berdahl, for many, many years. I can remember meeting the family way back in, I think, 2004 or 5 when I was at Newmont at the time and discussing mining claims and so forth. But I got to know them a bit, and I got to know Scott even more so over time because, we talked frequently about this portfolio of projects that they had identified and staked in the Yukon. And, Scott went on to university, went to MIT. He also went to King Abdul's University. Absolute brilliant mind and one of the most, bright and upcoming CEOs in the mining industry. I got to see Scott out in the field last year in July. What a delight to see the guy standing on the outcrops of what is one of the most amazing, I think it's the most amazing gold discovery I've seen in terms of what's been delivered here. It's the best behaved gold deposit in that I know of on the planet. And it's so exciting to introduce Scott. But Scott, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thanks, Quinton. Thanks. Yeah, big shoes to fill there, but luckily the deposit is. Yeah, I agree. It's a fantastic discovery. And sorry, I shouldn't call it a deposit yet. Obviously, it will be one, but the rules dictate that we've got to get to an official resource before I call it that. But there's a lot of mineralized rock, very contiguous down there. So Snowline, more broadly, we're a fairly new company. We're just coming up in a few days on our 3rd anniversary as a company, and we've done a lot in those 3 years. We basically started with some of the private prospecting assets that my family had assembled, my father and I, as well as my brother, over decades of exploring in the Yukon, and really just in these markets needed a way to get more capital to put some drill holes into these targets, and we did that. And very happy that fate kind of led us that way, because there was a time when I was just trying to give these things away. So I'll make, let's see here. There we go. I'll make a few forward-looking statements throughout this, as is the nature of what we're doing. So this is just zooming in. You can see this map area in the Eastern Yukon Territory. We have quite a large land position. We've done a lot of prospecting in this area, this big kind of fold that you can see in the background of this slide, where very few had been looking before. There was a little bit of sporadic work around the Rogue Plutonic Complex. A little bit of work in the early 80s when this first kind of came online as a potential gold target. And then again in the mid 90s, following the discovery of Fort Knox, there was a wave of exploration for these reduced intrusion type gold systems. But I think the consensus was then that, these are going to be low grade, and here, that might not cut it. So there wasn't really a lot of work done at that point. But of course, we found some pretty spectacular grades out there. And more broadly, we're not just looking for reduced intrusion. So it's kind of just incidental that this is what we found out there. It was, we were in the area looking for these intrusions, looking at these intrusions, but also recognized the potential for Carlin back in the mid 2000s up in the Einderson area. And subsequently, Attack Resources made a Carlin style discovery, and we have some targets on the Einderson project that look pretty interesting. And then also snipping around at Einderson, we found this epizonal orogenic gold. And so we came into this with this regional idea because we were seeing multiple styles of mineralization over a big area. And we really had just the time to go in there and pick and choose and explore iteratively, both in the decade before launching Snowline, and then even as we've launched Snowline, the junior markets are so depressed that we haven't set off a staking rush with these discoveries, and we've been able to grab what we want to out there. So it's fantastic to have this position, and then to have something like Valley really driving the regional exploration. Just a very quick snapshot of the company. We have a strong management insider ownership position, about 27%. Institutional interest is picking up. We're very happy to have B2 Gold as a 9.9% shareholder. And we also had Keith Newmeyer was instrumental in launching the company, and he owns a large stake and has taken part in multiple financing since we launched Snowline. And we've just, I mentioned the institutional segment, and that's just, I think Snowline has kind of crossed the threshold just very recently in terms of getting analyst coverage, going from a totally wildcat junior to having more of a blue chip, pre-resource junior appeal, I guess, in terms of what we've really gotten into there. And so, yeah, we picked up coverage from various analysts, and with that has come some institutional investment. So we're happy to see some big names and some sticky shareholding, continuing to take pieces of the pie here. We've got about 35 million in the treasury right now, 147 million shares out, and as well as a lot of warrants. They're in the money at 250, and we'll be coming to this year, and those are in strong hands. So we're considering that money very likely to come in, and we're not too worried about a relatively small amount of warrants hitting the market. And yeah, I think, we've done a lot over the last 3 years, as I mentioned, going from just a ragtag crew kind of throwing a little bit of financing together to go and test out these targets. And every year we've done a lot. 2021 is not on here, but we've been, very lucky that our exploration thesis worked out in launching the company. And we've done a lot along the way, and we're looking forward to an even bigger year in 2024. But ultimately, this basically spans the picture from some of the first drill holes. In January 2022 was when we got our first results for the first 4 holes at Valley in, and you can see almost a step function forming where we get into the exploration season each year, and people start to really realize that things are interesting out there. And at every point, just for the record, every point in this graph, I've been told by people that I've missed it, every single spot on that graph. So I know it can look intimidating, but we think that there's a lot more value in what we've found out there with Valley alone, let alone the regional potential. And those accomplishments, I'm in the very fortunate position of being able to talk about the company a lot. But the company is really, or the accomplishments of the company really owe to a very hardworking and very bright team that we've assembled. And I think we've had a kind of a snowball effect where our successful exploration has allowed us to attract more talent, and that talent has gone out to continue to build out the company in a very strong fashion. So I won't go through name by name here, and there are others on the team who are doing a lot who are not on this slide. But it's fantastic, the group that we put together and what we are accomplishing as a team. And the other aspect of our success, of course, is Valley. As you mentioned, Quinton, it's quite an outstanding discovery. I would agree with that. And you can see just, from this figure, it kind of gets a little crowded. We started out just labeling a few holes here, and we keep adding and adding. And this is actually cutting it down to, just those holes that are more than 500 gram meters, just when you multiply the grade by the interval. And really what you can take away from looking at this is the continuity. And actually, I've got a video here that'll potentially show that. Could we run that? Yeah, perfect. So here we are looking at Valley, and you can see it's in a valley. We're very creative on the naming of it. But what that means is that it's very mineable. You can basically picture a pit and right there, and you can see in the grades, the greater than 2 is pink in color. And the other thing to take away is the consistency. And so you can have a big gram meter intersection, but you could have that in one very tight zone that's extremely high grade, but maybe it's not continuous and so on. But what we're seeing here is just great continuity over a very big area. So you can see that's about 700 meters of strike length of mineralized rock. We're seeing visible gold kind of throughout the whole system. That almost makes it more like exploring a base metal deposit where we drill the rocks and we have a pretty good idea of if we're in good stuff or not. And you can just see the gold throughout it. And so here's turning 90 degrees and looking at that same core zone, kind of cutting it away to a slice through that zone. And you can see that continuity. And again, you can see, what a pit shape might look like. And key to this is the distribution of those grades, with those highest grades right near the surface. It's really an exceptional system, and it's still open. You can see, and Quinton, you've talked about it in some of your videos, that there's a lot of interesting open and big intervals on that northeastern boundary, which we just rotated by. And yeah, we can maybe go back into the slides there.
Hold on, I think there we go.
And so, yeah, just as a quick recap, this is that first slice that we looked at, and it's cutting a narrow slice just to look at the mineralization here. But again, very continuous mineralization. So when we talk about these larger intervals of, in this case, the sort of latest hole, and it was the first one that we drilled kind of with the grain. Everything else, you generally want to drill against the grain or through systems to get a good understanding of what they are. But we also wanted to know, just have a direct example of mineralization holding up between these sections that we're drilling, but also getting an idea of how the grade behaves when you drill it closer to parallel to the veins. And so as expected, we're seeing a little bit of increased variance, a couple of little low sniffs here and there, but higher sniffs that balance them out, because basically you're in one mineralized vein for longer and out of it for longer. But on average, it's very consistent with what we're seeing elsewhere. Yeah, we're basically seeing good multi-gram grains. And So when you look at this mineralized area near surface, that just has such a strong advantage when it comes to, and as a forward-looking statement, but the economics of this thing, where you're digging into multiple gram per ton material. Quinton, you mentioned some of the benefits of this mineralization. It's also, in addition to being clean, it's easy to get the gold out, generally speaking, and we've done that. Or we've shown that with the metallurgical work that we've done so far, and we're doing more advanced tests for more quantitative understanding. It's consistent and it's big. So to be able to dig into what could be, several years of mining, where you're just basically digging out 100% multiple gram per ton rock in a system where the gold just wants to come out of these rocks, it's a pretty exciting scenario, really a dream scenario for what we would have anticipated in launching the company. And again, this is just that view from the side. I'll just draw your attention to that picture on the left. If anyone is out for a property tour, you'll see many holes just like this. This is hole 39. This one here, 550 meters at 2.5 grams per ton. This is the upper part of the hole, so right from surface. And depending on your monitor size and resolution here, you can see we've got the pink tags are different in the scale than here. If we just wanted to make it, we basically had to increase the scale to show more than 5 gram per ton. And you can see that a majority of those tags are actually pink. The average over this whole 132 meter interval is 5 grams per ton. And so it's just a remarkable mineralization to be getting into. And yeah, then red is greater than 2, between 2 and 5. Orange is 1 to 2 grams per ton. And the scale below that is almost irrelevant over this interval. So I think look on here, there's just a handful of assays right there that they're less than 1 gram, but basically everything. And the other thing you can take away from this, Mike Berkey actually pointed this out. I've seen it a lot here, but when you see that consistent diagonal every time, we're getting close to 100% recovery in everything we do. So it's, not only well behaved from a grade point of view, but just very well behaved rocks too. And it just ticks so many boxes in terms of what we want to see out there. And then as Simon pointed out, and as you see in these systems, they often occur in clusters. You have these plutonic complexes. The conditions that form one deposit can form another deposit nearby. And that's been seen in multiple other camps. And so we do have other intrusions in this rogue plutonic complex. We're quite keen on Gracie, which is very close to Valley and has a big geochemical signature. We've drilled 9 holes into the Hornfells there and found some high-grade isolated instances of gold, as well as veins that are the same orientation and the same style of mineralization with visible gold in them as Valley. But we haven't found that intrusion yet. But if we do get our, well, actually, we're using Valley as a nice Rosetta Stone, and if we do sink our teeth into that system there, then it wouldn't be the first deposit discovered on hole 10 or higher. And actually, that's more the norm than the exception. And another thing that we like about Gracie and other targets like it, when they're totally covered, is that the highest grades of these systems are often on the top, and that's likely explains the grade distribution, the grade profile that we see at Valley. And so it's great to have it exposed at Valley, but it also means that part of Valley is probably gone. That could have been a much bigger system. We're very happy with what's still there, and we're very happy that it's right at surface. But it kind of illustrates what target we could be looking for in a system like Gracie, where you have that entire and potentially even higher grade cap sitting there intact. And so we're certainly excited to keep looking at Gracie, and we're certainly excited to keep looking more regionally. We just had results out, I think it was earlier this week, on our Aurelius target. That's up 12 kilometers from Valley along this northwest-southeast trend, that the structural trend that basically, if you look up the valley from Valley, you'll see the mountains where Aurelius is. And as I mentioned, a lot of interesting targets more regionally, both within the rogue plutonic complex and targets of other types in this mineralized area, which we just have not had the bandwidth to get out there and explore these dozens of targets. Although we are doing a lot of aggressive regional work in addition to the expansion of the exploration and progression of Valley. And so just a quick look ahead. I don't want to take too much time here, but we're going to be kicking off the field season in May, and we're going to be advancing Valley. There's still more exploration to do there, and even filling in the this kind of higher grade core that we've identified there has been very fruitful in 2023, and we have more work to do there. Where we'll drill, say, a hole with a nice 2 gram interval at surface, a hole with a nice 2 gram interval at surface on a big spacing, and you drill in between them, and you hit one of these 4 or 5 gram intervals at surface. So that infill has been very productive as we kind of learn about the grade profile of this thing, and we have more work to do in that area, as well as chasing those open edges. And then, and the other aspect of it is, we recognize we can't just explore Valley forever, but what we have there is pretty exciting. And so we are looking at getting the pieces in place for meaningful advancement of that project, and that includes the advanced metallurgy we're doing now, and looking at things like the environmental baseline that we started actually 18 months ago, expanding that and getting a really good understanding of how we can move this ahead. And then from a regional point of view, we'll be drilling on other targets, and that we're basically hard at work right now, prioritizing different targets based on the results coming in. And it's an exciting time, and we will be drilling multiple regional targets, following up on last year's drill results, but also drilling some brand new ones as well. And keeping that greenfields work going, like finding Valley, finding another system that we found called Jupiter. We're finding these things just sticking out of the ground. And so it's really underexplored to just completely unexplored country. And so there's a lot more grassroots work for us to do, and we'll be working hard at it through the season.
All right. Look, Scott, I'm going to tell you, every time I had a question, you answered it. So I didn't interject. But I will say this, there is a lot up there. You and your family, your dad have been prospecting here for years. And I think really what people have to understand is you guys you're like way out ahead of the pack in terms of understanding the potential and where things are at up in this country. It's not every day you just stumble straight across a valley. These things can be challenging at times. It can be partially buried or things like that. But you guys know where they're at, and these new targets that you have are really going to build the story. Like I think the story and the value at Snowline has a lot of room to grow. When I talk to people, I say it's like the NVIDIA of the gold space. You'd never want to bet against NVIDIA, and you never want to bet against Snowline. All right. Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Quinton.
All right. Mike, I believe you're up here. I'm going to advance a slide there. Thank you. Yep. Okay.
We're going to start with a quick video, but I'll let you do your little introduction.
Okay. Look, Mike Burke is joining us from Sitka. It's an absolute pleasure. Once again, a well-seasoned Yukon explorer. He's actually had different roles in different, regimes, even like survey and whatnot, as well as working on the discovery of Ketsa River. I mean, this guy's been around. He's well known in the Yukon and knows, these properties like the RC Gold project that Sitka has. So it's an absolute pleasure to introduce Mike, and I'll let you take it away, man.
All right, we'll start with a quick video. Here we go. I think it's Sitka Gold's RC Gold project is located in the heart of the Yukon's Tombstone Gold Belt. The project is accessible year-round from Dawson City. With a long history of placer mining activity in the area, the roads are well maintained, and the drive from Dawson to the project is only 2 hours. In 2016, while examining a new access route within the Clear Creek area, Corco and his son Ryan, with plenty of experience in the region, recognized the new potential in the district and started compiling the land package as we know it today. Exploration activity began on the project in 2017, with initial diamond drilling occurring in 2020, and in 2021 the Blackjack Zone was discovered with 220 meters grading 1.17 grams per ton gold in hole 21. This marked the discovery of an exceptional new bulk tonnage intrusion-related gold deposit. The first resource for the project was announced in early 2023. The Clear Creek Intrusive Complex is a cluster of intrusions in a 3 by 5 kilometer area. Sitka Gold is currently focused on the northern part of the Clear Creek Intrusion Complex. Sitka believes these intrusions emanate from a common source at depth. Since 2020, drilling has primarily taken place on the Blackjack, Eiger, and Saddle zones. This led to the announcement of the initial resource of 1.34 million ounces in the Blackjack and Eiger deposits. Drilling in 2023 was able to expand the known mineralization in the Blackjack zone and intersect mineralization within the Saddle zone located midway between Blackjack and Eiger. Drilling is planned to expand the Blackjack and Eiger deposits, which are open in all directions, prove the resource potential of the Saddle, in addition to testing other known gold-bearing intrusions on the district-scale property. Now the work continues to expand the known resources and mineralization on the project. So yeah, that's a great little introductory video and brings us up to where we are now. So as introduced, I'm Mike Berkey with Sitka Gold. I'm a geologist, so I'm bound to make forward-looking statements. But I'll quickly introduce you to the team. Myself, Quinton touched on my experience. Most of my working life has been spent in the Yukon, the last 35 years. 20 of those years I spent with the Yukon Geological Survey. So I had the pleasure of visiting. Actually, I visited every one of these projects in the Tombstone webinar today. I've had boots on the ground at all of them. I met Cor Coe, our chairman and CEO, in the mid-90s when he was working just north of the Clear Creek project on the Florin gold deposit. He's credited with the discovery of that. Knew Cor as a geologist in my role with the Yukon Geological Survey, as well as Don Penner, the president. I met Don as well in my role back in the 90s. And actually, after I left the survey, we worked together for a couple of years. So when these guys approached me to join Sitka Gold, it was a pretty easy decision. They're very keen explorers. They're looking for gold deposits. That's what they do. So that's what I like to do as well. We have other projects down in the States, in Nevada and Arizona. So Scott Price takes care of that, a well-seasoned geologist down there. And just rounding out our team, we have a strong technical team as well. On our advisory board, Craig Hart. We worked together at the Yukon Geological Survey when these styles of intrusions were first being discovered. Craig did the research. I did the liaising with companies. So we work together. We're good friends, and it's really great to have him on the advisory board. One thing about this Tombstone Gold Belt companies, we're all Yukoners. We've known everybody for years. We all have extremely strong teams, and we're not competing with each other. We're doing our best to help each other out, because this is really important to us. It's important to the Yukon and everybody there. And we've been looking at these things for a long time. So to see us enter this next stage of development in the Yukon, where we're seeing production like at Victoria Gold and the incredible discovery at Snowline and the tier 1 deposit that Tara's starting to outline at Banyan is pretty exciting. So we're more than happy to do our best to help each other out. So there's a bit of the management team. I won't dwell on that too long, but again, Sitka Gold, just like everybody else you're going to hear from today, is really led by solid groups of people. Quick company snapshot. We've suffered like everybody else except for Snowline Gold and the share price. Most of last season, we announced our initial resource in January of 2023, and our share price still bounced around, 10 to 14 cents. In August, when we started releasing our results that were subsequent to the announcement of our initial resource, and we're still hitting, expanding that deposit, we started getting appreciation. We had some key investment by different folks. And in the last little while, Quinton's come on board with our last financing, and we've seen an appreciation in our share price. 250 million shares outstanding, quite a few warrants, about 40 million of those warrants are expiring in the next month. They're at 18 cents, a lot of warrants expiring in the next year. We've been in the money a little bit, so we're hoping some of those get exercised, but that share structure is going to change a fair bit in the next year. And yeah, we're around 17.5 cents, so we're happy with where we're at, but we obviously see the potential we have to really increase that. So as I mentioned in that video, we're in what we call the heart of the Tombstone Gold Belt. That's the area between Dawson City, where the famous Klondike Gold Rush was, and Mayo, which is close to where Dublin Gulch and Banyan Gold and Victoria Gold are. This area has great access into it because it's seen placer mining for the last 100 years. And then as far as the Yukon goes, that's where the most intense exploration for these styles of deposits have been. And you can see before in April of 2020, when you look at the resources in the district, Victoria Gold's Eagle and Olive Mine, Sabre Gold at Brewery Creek, and then the Florin Gold deposit. Since April of 2020, the discoveries in that district have added over 11 million ounces. And the bulk of that, of course, is the Banyan Gold 7 million ounce discovery at Ormat. And thanks for increasing your resource, Terry. You just got this over 11 million ounces since 2020. Sitka Gold's Blackjack and Eiger discovery. Victoria Gold continues to expand their deposit. They also found what's their other little deposit? The Raven deposit. So there's a lot of fruit coming to bear in this neck of the woods. So that's why we're excited about this region of the Yukon. It's seen a few phases of exploration, and now, of course, with that development and subsequent mining at Victoria Gold, it proves it's a very viable place. So the resource, we announced this in January of 2023. As I mentioned in the video, the first diamond drilling was only in 2020. There's known intrusions up here known to be gold bearing, but the first diamond drilling wasn't until 2020. And so that resource at a 0.25 gram per ton cutoff. There's two deposits, Blackjack and Eiger. They're about 2 kilometers apart. Blackjack's higher grade, about 34 million tons at a grade of 0.83, so it contains 900,000 ounces. Eiger, 27 million tons at a grade of 0.5, 440,000 ounces. So combined 61 million tons at a grade of 0.68 for 1.34 million ounces. So a nice start. Those deposits, as I mentioned, they're a couple kilometers apart. In 2023, we drilled 16 holes, 6,500 meters. 12 of those holes were around the Blackjack outside of the resource area. That's the leapfrog model, the yellow blob there. And we continue to intersect excellent mineralization. So this deposit is expanding. We hope to get over to the Eiger, but Blackjack was the gift that kept giving. We drilled a couple holes in the saddle zone. That's that zone midway. Hole 54 hit 84 meters, 1.21 grams per ton gold. There's been some previous drilling there, so we see the potential for putting a resource together in that area. And then off the page to the east, we put a couple holes into the Josephine intrusion, and we hit 6 meters of 0.85 was the best intersection in there. So we've proven that's a gold-bearing intrusion with the first drilling of that, and so we've got more follow-up to do on that. So as well, like Scott talked about, there's high grades in these systems, and the Blackjack, that's what's really attractive with it. This is just in the highlighted yellow are intersections that are 1.5 grams or higher. And so right from the discovery hole, hole 21, it hit 50 meters of 2 grams. That was at 120 meters depth. But if you jump down to hole 24, you can see right from 16 meters depth, so virtually surface, 66 meters at 2.11 grams per ton. So we have that high grade component as well. And the most recent hole, one of the most recent holes, the best hole on the property, hole 47, drilled in 2023. It hit 219 meters of 1.31 grams per ton. It is the most southern and one of the deepest holes on the Blackjack outside of the resource. And you can see at 276 meters depth there, it hit 55 meters of 3.11 grams per ton. So we're seeing that high grade component go from surface down to depth. We haven't really defined that, but that's obviously one of our goals for this upcoming field season, to continue to just trace this deposit, try and define it, and keep drilling, because we're not done yet. We haven't defined this. So as I mentioned, again, everybody's mentioned these intrusions occur in clusters. We're in what we call the Clear Creek intrusive complex. And that's a cluster in that 3 by 5 kilometer area. But we have a large land package, 386 square kilometers. And there's a number of other gold bearing intrusions. They've all had soil sampling and early stage kind of work on them. They're known to be gold bearing. So there's 9 intrusions on our ground. And so not only do we have these deposits in the northern part of the Clear Creek intrusive complex to focus in on and define these, but we also have a lot of other regional targets. So that's the focus for the next year, of course, is to continue to define our deposits, but also start evaluating some of these other intrusions on the property. So yeah, I mean, and there's likely, just like over in Snowline, some intrusions that haven't been mapped and are at depth. We've got soil geochemistry in that Alp area that's kind of at the bottom of the screen. You can kind of see some yellow dotted areas. Those have gold, bismuth, tellurium anomalies in the soil. So you don't get those without an intrusion. So we suspect there's unmapped and potentially buried intrusions there. So a lot of additional potential besides the stuff that we know about already. So that's it, short and sweet. The catalyst for Sitka Gold, we are fully funded. We have $7.5 million in the treasury. We have a 15,000 meter drill contract in place, and we're mobilizing right now to start drilling on the RC Gold property. As I mentioned, it's road accessible out of Dawson, 2-hour drive, lots of good access, so it's easy to get in there year round. Our Blackjack and Eiger deposits remain open in all directions. Saddle Zone looks like there's a resource coming together. And then we have those other regional targets. So a lot of potential coming up for Sitka Gold in the next year. And we're in a pretty happy spot, that's for sure.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike. Look, I didn't ask any questions before we move on to Banyan there. Look, you know, I became very intrigued with your story in September last year when you announced hole 47. It is one of the deepest holes in the property. In fact, I think it's the deepest, if I remember right. And it's also, like I said, it's kind of on the southern extremity. The other things that caught my attention is, you know, there's nothing to say that Eiger and, you know, the Blackjack couldn't connect at depth there. Like that looks like you're in one bigger, you know, intrusion, you know, we'll call it. Okay, so, you know, like that video you showed at the beginning, awesome, man. That really tells a picture. If people watching this webinar want to back up after, you know, it posts and look at those images, you know, just let your brain imagine connecting those two deposits, you know, at depth. That could be incredible. Okay, but the more incredible part is, in my view, is seeing these grades pop up. Okay, I remember getting an email in September after your results came out. I think Michael Gray went up to site and visited you guys, and he took some photos of the core from hole 57 or 47, that high grade. And I remember seeing the textures of that intrusive. Okay, like it's without going into geo nerd land. What struck me is that looks like a very high level part of an intrusion. You see a lot of big phenocrysts and stuff. Usually those float up to the top, and that might be telling us we're at the tippy top of a big stock. Now, Scott Berdal mentioned, about 10 minutes ago. He said, oftentimes you see the best gold kind of pool up, up in the the cupola of the intrusion. Could be that you guys have something like that. Is that a reasonable statement that one of the big prizes on your property could be the fact that you have basically a chance of finding a fully preserved, reduced intrusive system here?
That'd be a happy day, yeah. There is a big hornfels zone that encompasses all those intrusions. So it suggests that there's a heat source that's altering those country rocks that are outside of the intrusion. And also, if you look at the Blackjack, Eiger, and Josephine intrusion, they're all slightly different compositions. So it suggests that it's an evolving magma. And similar to Snowline, where they have the fine-grained diorite, that some of Craig's recent work and Scott's team suggests that maybe that's coming from deep in the mantle. It's bringing the gold, and as it evolves into that more coarser grain phase, that's where the gold is going. And so we can make that comparison with the Eiger, which is a diorite, and the Saddle, which is more of a granodiorite, the coarser grain. So we may have a similar kind of evolution of these magmas, and they're driving off the gold, and we're chasing it down. And sure, there's always we're geologists. There's always a possibility, and that there's something bigger at depth, and we're seeing that grade. It's very interesting to see that grade continue from surface to depth. It's not behaving like a cupola where you've just got those high grades at surface. It's suggesting that maybe there's a source that's driving that gold up, and we're just in the upper part of the pipeline.
Okay, I think that's something any investor in Sitka should consider, is that you might have pricked the very tippy top of something much, much bigger. That's my hope. No promises, but my hope is you guys are going to nail something like truly special in this system. But appreciate your presentation here, Mike. I'll bring up some more questions after the end of the next presentation. We'll have a chance to answer some more. Thanks.
All right.
Okay, Tara, welcome. All right.
Thank you.
Tara, it's my pleasure to introduce, went backwards. Okay. Introduce Tara Christie. She is CEO of Banyan Gold. I've known Tara for quite some time now. Every time I talk to her, I learn more about her history in the Yukon, her family's role in mining here for many eons, placer mines. So she's got that level of experience. But she's also now director of several of the companies that are operating in the Yukon, and obviously at the helm of Banyan Gold here, which really has one of the biggest resources discovered in modern time here in North America. I think it's an exceptional, story that when you talk about big, this puppy's big, and I don't want to spoil her punchline, but I'll let her jump in. This is a big story.
Well, the whole Tombstone Belt is a big story, I think, and appreciated you telling the story, Quinton, because you've set the stage really well. That I don't have to go back and talk about how these deposits are formed. And as you know, we haven't found the intrusion yet. We're still in all that mineralization outside of where that intrusion could be. We're working on it, and we got lots of information now because we have a really big database of data. In this image, you're looking at our project area. That's 7 million ounces right on surface, with some really key attributes. One, some really easy, moderate topography, no big rivers, no big lakes. In fact, a power line right through there that actually was rebuilt in January 2021, and it's only energized to half its capacity. The hydroelectric dam is only 50 kilometers away, and that line is also connected to the grid in the Yukon, which goes to the other hydro dam down in Whitehorse. So we already have grid power, and we just need 50 meters of power line to get across the highway right away to where we would connect on our property. So that's pretty pretty exceptional. Cell phone service, fiber optic cable, that's amazing infrastructure. And, thanks to the two mines that are right beside us. And I'm gonna say lots of forward-looking statements because I'm also in exploration, and this is just such a fun business. Next is just a little video because I want to show you, put us in context of the belt. I know everybody else has done that as well. So hopefully the video will play here. And you can see Hecla right beside us and Victoria Gold's just 25 kilometers as the crow flies. As you were talking about, they're planned to be a 200,000 ounce producer, just put out their results that they made their guidance in terms of production this last week. And so we've got a mill within 10 kilometers of us and a heap leach mine within 25 kilometers. We have 173 square kilometers here, which is, quite a large land package, and 300 square kilometers when you have our Nitra property off to the west, which is a pretty big land package as well. Here on Ormac, we really drilled less than 5% to get that 7 million ounces. I guess the video is not going to play. I don't know if they're
No, it's playing.
Oh,
Can
is it
you
playing?
not see it?
No, I can't see it. Oh, it's playing. Okay, well, so you've already seen the cutoff grades and things like that?
We're looking at the pit. It's doing a fly under of the pit right now.
Okay, so then you can see the airstrip dipping underneath the power line, and then the power line are the sheeted vein deposits. And then when the green comes on, that is the 2023 resource, which then the 2024 resource, you can see that was just with 25,000 meters of drilling to get that upgrade from 6.2 to 7 million. And then the pink is where we used a 0.6 cutoff. So that's 4 million ounces of a gram. And you can see how it's distributed across the deposit. And then the purple is 0.9 gram cutoff. And that's 2.5 million ounces at 1.5 grams across the deposit. So there's higher grade within this. This is still an inferred resource. So, we can talk about it, but, certainly is giving us some areas to target as we kind of zoom in on some of those areas within the pit and look at different cutoffs geologically. And you can see, our progress has been pretty rapid. I became the CEO in 2016. We acquired this in 2017, but we made the power line discovery in 2019. And the power line resource in 2020 was only 143,000 ounces. And now it's 6.2 of the 7 million ounces. And looking back, we haven't even touched airstrip since 2019, and we know it's higher grade and has room to grow. So pretty exciting. There are, as you said, Quinton, there are not very many 7 million ounce projects in North America in a jurisdiction where two mines have just been permitted recently with a settled First Nation, which understands mining and has agreements with local mining companies and companies that support mining, with existing hydropower, existing roads, all on the property. And unlike lots of other stories, we're year-round because we have infrastructure. This project is not limited by the seasonal or the cold weather. We've drilled right to December 20th and picked it up in February again. So that's a huge advantage. And the two mines beside us operate year-round. That is something that's very strategic for us. And we have a strong treasury going into 2024. We've seen this map, but the one thing I draw your attention to is that we are starting to have a little sub-district here. If we draw a 25-kilometer circle around us right now, we have 18 million ounces in gold equivalent resources. That's pretty, and a mill and a heap leach mine within that. And, as the resource becomes larger within it and the circle becomes smaller, I think that's really going to be exciting and driving people to look here where there's existing infrastructure and resources. We've got a great team as well. Everybody's talked about their team. We've added to our team from the project development perspective with Kai, also Mark Blythe and Brad Thrall, because we know that this project, the next steps really are showing that it's an economic project, and everything from the metallurgy to doing some high-level scoping studies, which will help us really understand how this deposit might be developed. In terms of our market cap and share price, we started this year strong with $7 million in the bank, and we do get some revenue from some of our rentals. So last year it was $700,000. We're on track to make somewhere between $700,000 and $1.5 million this year, depending on how successful we are with that. And we've got some great shareholders as well, strong institutional hands. with Franklin Gold and Fidelity and another 31% of institutional shareholders. Insiders, including myself, are vested with strong positions, and I'm a 4% shareholders. And our directors and insiders actually purchased their positions in the market. This, was a shell, and then we've all come in since then. I'm the third CEO, so I think that's a little bit of an advantage in that I'm very aligned with my shareholders because I've got real hard equity into it. Victoria Gold, 11.3. It's nice to have that technical vetting by the mine right next door. That is, and their cooperation. It lets people both look at down the road and say, hey, there's an operating mine that has a very similar grade to what you have. Yeah. And, looking at our share price, we're currently trading, I think, around 30 cents. And we've traded as high as 57. So, I think we've got lots of area to reroute. That makes us about an $8 to $10 per ounce company. I think you look at other companies that are in our peers in that pre-development and development, they're, kind of lows to 30s, average 50 and higher. Certainly we're getting to that scale where we are significant. Just looking at the distribution of the resource, with the orange being the current pit, and the two deposits there, Airstrip and Powerline. We used to have 3, but we've really simplified it into 2 deposits. Lots of room to continue to grow. People, we're currently working on our 2024 plans, and we have lots of options. Do we start to use the information that we have to vector in on the intrusive? Do we start to continue to add ounces to get this up to 8 or 9 million ounces? And we think it has potential for more. Do we focus on going to depth now that we have such a large pit, some of your lowest strip ratio, and we're seeing some high grades right at the bottom of that 200-meter pit? That's also an option for us. Or focusing in on the higher grade, and the higher grade, that might be your first few years of mining. So, we're doing a lot of work right now since we just put out this model before we announce what our program is for this year, but we're funded for a program, so we're excited about that. And we've got a lot of options. So my team is diligently working through the options, and then we'll cherry pick from that the best options after we make sure that we've used the best information to really improve our odds of success. Everybody was waiting for our metallurgy, and I know I talked to you a little bit about it, Quinton. I think there still are 3 viable options, and then combinations of these options. Good recoveries, 91% from carbon and leach, carbon and pulp. And remember, this is first phase metallurgy. We know, and you can continue to optimize it, and we're continuing to do work with that. But it's pretty regular that people come out with initial metallurgy, and then they work on processes to optimize both recoveries, but also decrease potential operating and capital costs. So we're working on that now, in hand with the high-level scoping studies that we're doing, so we understand the economics and the key drivers. Gravity and flotation at 84%. And you saw in the video, there was Victoria Gold's Raven across the way. That's a deposit that's within 4 kilometers of us. It has a grade of 1.7 and 1.1 million ounces again. And I know they've done some more drilling there. And from their information, they said that's a flotation. Will there be 2 mills built within 4 kilometers? That's a question, I think. With an operating mine with both potential for a mill and expanding heap leach, will there be some district consolidation? So, some of the work we're doing is also focused on what some of the people who might be interested in our project are looking for, as well as, what the synergies might be with other projects around us. The heap leach recovery, at 64 to 72, that is in the range of a lot of operating projects. It's very similar to what Victoria Gold had at their initial metallurgy. Their life of mine is more targeting mid-70s for their recoveries. But again, that in combination with a mill option or a heap leach option is certainly viable. Gravities, 53%, pretty good start for gravity. Could be a part of any of the processes, and the low mass pull on flotation, under 4%, that really does mean that you'd have potentially a fairly low capital cost on some of the flotation options. Other things, as you said, Quinton, this low sulfur means, not acid generating for some of the environmental results. That's important. Lots of excess buffering capacity, and low cyanide consumptions also, speaks to operating costs. One of the other advantages is what we have being in a jurisdiction with two mines right beside us is that we have the advantage of that data. I talked about bringing Kai on. He's actually been collecting data across our property since 2008. So we have a huge database of baseline environmental data, 7 weather stations, like a tremendous amount of data, which has been collected by the two mines and continues to be collected by them, including wildlife studies ongoing across our property now. We did a gap analysis back in 2001, and I hired Kai then with a consulting firm to do the add-on work that we needed to make sure that this project really was properly positioned for permitting. That's a big advantage. If someone were to decide what the project was to be, and we're working hard on that with both the engineering and the metallurgy, we could get into permitting very, very quickly. And getting through this process, you could potentially start construction in 4 to 5 years. That's another huge advantage. We've got the scale of resource, and we are putting together a very detailed listing and costing of all the steps that need to be done to get it through permitting, which our team knows very, very well. And that is also an asset. Somebody comes and looks at us, they'll see the geology, but they'll also see a really clear path forward to move this project forward. So, we're pretty strategically positioned. There aren't very many projects with our scale of resource, with existing infrastructure that we believe is permittable. Our valuation, I think, is pretty compelling. A lot of gold projects, and all of them that we talked today, have pretty compelling valuations. If we start to see some love come into the juniors, it's going to be the quality projects that are going to move forward fast, that are going to get attention first. We've got great shareholders. I appreciate their support. We know we have lots of ounces we can continue to add. We can focus on high grade. We can continue to look for the source of the mineralization. So lots of options for exploration, which will give us news flow here through 2024. And then doing that background work to really add value. It's a pretty exciting jurisdiction. So that's the story, Quinton.
All right. Thanks very much, Sarah. Look, I did speak with you recently about metallurgy. It is nice to see that level of technical work done on a project. You need to do that. Look, these gold projects aren't just exploration stories. It's not about drilling, 100% about drilling and the size of the resource. It's also about the ability to extract metal out of rock. Okay, in fact, that's probably one of the most important aspects of any deposit, whether it's gold or anything. Okay, so to see you do that level of technical work around metallurgy, and I know other companies are doing, like Scott mentioned, he's doing it now as well, is very good. It's good to see. And what really struck me was that you do have multiple likely paths that you could follow, depending on the grade of the rock. You could potentially mill it, float it, gravity, direct cyanide. So there's lots of scenarios there. You also have the heap leach possibility as well. But if you step back and look at this as a bigger picture, would it be fair to say that what you have, let's say a major mining company decides, hey, we're going to walk into this region and we want to establish a new gold district, a la Carlin type thing. Okay. Would it be fair to say that the metallurgical solutions that you have in sight, given that they are compatible with other processing that is either currently active right now in the district, or like you said, maybe mills that are likely going to get built here in the near future, that would lend itself to a great deal of synergy across the gold field?
Absolutely. That is kind of one of the real strong points that we have, is that this is a district. We've got the great infrastructure where you could build that central facility, hydropower already on the property. All those things are pretty key. Moderate topography. You look at Raven, it's uphill across the way. Are they going to build a mill up there? I think there's lots of scenarios where you could see where it'd be far easier to bring that downhill across the valley to a mill on the other side. But, there's other companies as well, and I think we're going to make more discoveries. So very similar to districts, and that's what brings a major player in. They start to see enough of these small companies that are all within an area where they can make a generational investment. And I've heard that from a few too. We want to be in a district for 40 or 50 years, and we want to, know that the projects has length and that there's room to grow either within those projects or, by acquiring other things that are nearby. So I think it's starting to get exciting and we're hopefully going to be the leader in the let's show them that this is mineable and that there's a place with infrastructure where they can get started.
Very, very good. Very good to hear. All right. We have gone a little bit long, but I would like to take about 10 minutes to follow up with questions. There's a lot of questions that have popped up. So please, all of you guys, turn your videos on and mics on. All right. We got the whole crew back here. And because the questions came in, of course, as people were presenting, I have them kind of in the order here. And look, for the guys running the webinar, I have been reading the questions. And I'm going to kind of distill, because there's probably 50, 60 questions that have popped up here. We don't have time for all of them, but I'll kind of distill it into the cream of the crop, and I'm going to go through it one by one for each one of you guys. Okay, so Simon, probably the two biggest questions, or we'll say the two generalized questions that people want to know: what you're doing this year. That's one, and the second is, how do you define success? Like, what constitutes a discovery? What's going to help catalyze Rackla going forward?
Well, what we did this year is drill. I mean, on the two projects we've identified, we'll certainly get the rigs turning on those very early. We have a number of other projects further down the belt in the NWT that need some groundwork, and we'll be doing that also. But the main focus will be trying to establish some ore grade intercepts in the discoveries we found. And what would be success? I think Snowline's defined that. They've raised the bar a little bit. I mean, 100 meters of a gram would be good, but 100 meters of 2 grams would be better. So, broad intercepts of ore grade mineralization in these discoveries that we've located.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Let's see. The next in line, Scott. A couple of questions. Your project's getting more to an advanced stage here. A lot of people are asking, in general terms, and I'm using a broad brush here, about the next steps. You touched on it briefly towards the end there, but why don't you give folks a sense of the potential and maybe timing of when you might do a resource? Look, I don't want to pin you down, and I'm happy to talk about things too, to soften it, because I can say things that you can't. Don't want to go too far into those weeds, but look, I realize that you have open areas in your deposit. I've talked about it. You've talked about it. Okay. People want to know when a resource is, like, that's going to be the be all and end all. My view is you don't put a resource out until you have what you think is fully defined a mineable deposit. In other words, you want to know everything before you go down that path. Not to say you can't grow it like Tara's done, but what do you see there? What do you see for timing on a resource? Also, what do you see as next steps to advance the project?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And we're of the thought right now, well, really not wanting to tie our hands down or tie our hands to to a set timeline. But yeah, we're still exploring at Valley. There's a lot of potential tonnage and grade to add. A lot of empty places in the in that leapfrog space, and we'd like to continue to build out the system and get a better understanding. And some of these areas we can explore with holes that kind of have a dual purpose of upgrading our understanding of the core area while also testing the unexplored and open edges of the system. So I think we have a good season of work to do out there ahead of us, and we're looking at 2 drills turning at Valley. That's what we did this year. It got us about 16,000 meters on the target. So we're pushing ahead with something like that, and plus or minus just prioritizing and optimizing during the season of whether we take one of the regional drills and push things ahead further, or send one of the drills from Valley off to another target, as the case may be.
Okay. All right. And in terms of, environmental work and stuff, give people a sense of what it takes to advance a project like this. You're at an advanced level now.
Yeah, so I think we're in a similar boat to Banyan in some ways, and how we're approaching the project and trying to really bring that hypothetical future cash flow closer to the present. And so we're really just reverse engineering what we need to do, and a big part of that is figuring out, okay, what does this look like? What is the what is the best process for the mineralization in question, and what are the top 3 or 4 options, and do those look substantially different from each other? If not, then you can just kind of go ahead with what you'd need for that setup. If they do, then considering which is the best option, and basically getting tailored baseline to that scenario, and just getting what you need from both an economic and environmental point of view and engineering point of view, essentially, to make it all come together.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, let's see. Next in line, if I had to distill the questions from Mike here, it's about what you're going to be doing this year. Like, what do you have coming up? Tell us how your season is going to unfold.
Yeah, we're fully financed, so we're going to start some drilling in the winter here. Gives us a good early start, gets a couple holes into it, and then come May we'll be doing our summer drilling program. So really, again, focusing on the deposits to start. We're still defining them, so don't know how big they are, and we got to work on that. But also, as I mentioned, we have 9 intrusions on the property. We've been doing, baseline work, soil sampling, geological mapping, different things to generate drill targets there. And we have some drill targets, and we'll hopefully be plugging a couple holes into some other targets on the project. So kind of a similar to Scott's situation. They've got a beautiful deposit and a lot of potential. So it's trying to define that to really put the whole project in a perspective so that you can, approach it methodically down the road as far as, your environmental baseline. Are you looking at a small area or a big area? So there's a lot of things you have to define before you can do the next step. So that's about it in a nutshell. So
one specific point, somebody's asking, are you going to drill between the two? You got the shallow drilling in the little area. I can't think of the name of the target between
Saddle.
the two. Saddle. Okay. Are you going to, they want to know if you're going to try to connect the two deposits.
I think we'll continue to drill on the deposits, and if they merge, that's the best way to do it. No plans to set up and drill one down to the Moho. But it's interesting, the Blackjack deposit does dip towards the Eiger. So you can project a connection at depth, but it's going to be fairly deep down unless something else is going on down there that we don't know about. So yeah, eventually we'll be testing that, whether that's this year or not. Hard to say. We'll see what the drill bit shows us.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. All right. Let's see. Questions for Tara. Look, I got to scroll down to the bottom here. Okay. Okay. What? Hold on. There was a really good question here. Here we go. What are the main advantage a company like Banyan Gold can leverage, on this year-round ability to work there? I think, what they're asking is, you've got a bigger bandwidth, we'll call it, or seasonal bandwidth to make hay while the sun shines, because you can work basically all year. How do you see, like they're asking, how do you see advancing this, given you have that luxury?
Well, when we make the decision to infill, it'll mean that we can actually go hard, and we've got not only the year round, but we've got the infrastructure. We've got 2 camps and basically 100 beds, which is, enough beds to have a very significant exploration program. So it's a combination of both. And that's really why we grew so quickly. Through COVID, we just put our head down and we drilled 40,000 meters one year, 50,000 meters the next year. And, that got us from 900,000 ounces to 6.2 million ounces. But it's because we drilled all the way to December, and then we'd start again in February. We wanted to make sure we were getting our results. So, you can have 6 drills and we have the capacity for it, but, you're better to have 2 or 3 drills and make sure you're actually looking at your results as you go along to make sure you're being successful. This is my voice.
No worries. Look, there's one last question that's from every single company, every single one. Okay, and therefore I'm going to ask it to all of you to just weigh in. And I think it's a very important question. We live in the age when we have to, we're not have to, but we need to be respectful of First Nations and recognize we're working in a First Nations territory that has its own, views on life and stuff. But, I do know that Eagle, for example, was a successful mine build. Okay, so the question to all you is, how do you see the relations with the First Nation, and how do you see working with them? Maybe you could just touch briefly one by one. Simon, I can let you go first, or if others want to weigh in, jump in there.
Yeah, we're pretty early exploration, but we have been working closely with the Sault Dene in the Northwest Territories and the Cascade Dene and the Natural Knife Gun in the Yukon. So we started, early on before we got to work on the property, having meetings with the First Nations groups and all three, and establishing relationships and trying to employ some of the people from those areas. And we'll continue to do that.
Developing the working relationship, having those opportunities is what you're saying at this stage.
At this stage, early on, yeah.
All right, Scott, I'll let you go next.
Okay, yeah. I mean, in terms of how we see the relationship, I would say we see it as crucial. I think that the industry as a whole is evolving to recognize that, and that it went from being totally irrelevant from the industry standpoint to a box to tick to where we are today, where I think most companies recognize that the First Nations are at the table, and that by finding and building various projects, that there is a lot to gain for everyone at that table. And so we've at Snowline, prior to launching the company, we were launching our conversations with the Anishinaabe, reaching out to other First Nations that our projects encompass, and so it's been we've been a small company, and we are a recently started company, and so initially with so much on their desks elsewhere, it can be hard to get onto the radar. But I think we're crossing that threshold with where we are now, and we have had quite a few successful collaborations with the Anishinaabe in particular, and just similar to Victoria Gold, similar to basically everyone on this call. We're in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe with the Valley discovery, and we're very happy with the relationship that we have with them right now, and we're looking forward to growing that relationship as we grow as a company.
Awesome. Yeah, I noticed like when I visited your camp in July of last year, that the solar farm is actually the working relation, an example of a working relation that you have. So that's awesome. So again, it's about providing opportunities or working on opportunities for everyone that benefit everyone. Okay, that's awesome. Mike, how about you guys?
Yeah, I think no doubt in the industry today, the partnerships and working with the First Nations is something that is essential to moving your project forward. It derives local benefits. We want to see the maximum benefit to Yukoners and First Nations. So working with the First Nations is going to lead to success on your project. And, again, we're evolving from an exploration project. Now we've got 2 deposits. We don't know how big they are. So we're moving into that next stage of working with the First Nations to come up with a way to both benefit them as well as us and keep moving the project forward. So it's an essential part of doing business. It's a new day. It's changed, from when we all first showed up in the Yukon, and it's a great change. So look forward to the day where we're really seeing substantial benefit from mining in the Yukon to the First Nations, and we're seeing that already with Victoria Gold and Hecla and everybody, and even the exploration companies, Terra's, charity work that she does is really benefiting the Yukon and Yukoners and First Nations. So it's a neat change. It's good to be part of.
Okay, that's good to hear. Look, mining is evolving, and we have to. Okay, and it's really good to hear this. Look, Terry, your project is advanced, but I also know that you have your own level of working with First Nation. But I know that you have, as a person, worked on, like Mike said, different things. Can you elaborate a bit more on that and tell people your background?
Sure. I started placer mining in the Yukon when I was a child with my family, and then I became the president of the Placer Miners Association and worked really closely from like 2001 to 2004 with all of the First Nations in the Yukon, and actually ended up with an agreement which 11 First Nations signed on to in 2004, which took a lot of effort to get 11 First Nations to sign on to an agreement. So my relationships with the community and I grew up in Dawson effectively, and so I've been part of the communities. My daughter was born in Whitehorse, so I've lived there, and I spend a lot of time in the communities. And then, as Mike said, the charity, getting out and actually talking to communities about what the needs are, what the challenges are, and having seen some of those people, which when I went and presented at the school, are now coming out to work for us, and trying their first few jobs, actually coming out. And that's one thing that our team does really well, because we're not fly-in. People can drive to our sites. We take a lot of risk on new people, and we've got a very detailed safety program for bringing new people in. A lot of them are young, and a lot of them are First Nations, and and we're not so dependent that if something doesn't work out or we can do that. And we've got a really good record of having people come in completely green and training them up, and then having them move up in positions for us. So we've been doing that, and the community knows that. We really try hard to get people hired from the community. And I thought it was going to be impossible, because with Victoria Gold and Hecla right beside us, you would think they would take every employable person. But because exploration's small and family oriented, and we can actually, treat people like individuals, it really is an ideal place for people to get that toehold into the community. And then, we make sure we're communicating with citizens. My daughters and I have been to every GA and NND since 2012, I think, was the first one we went to, where you just talk to people and you're part of the community. And then you have your more formal meetings where we meet with the lands department. We go over our pre-season reports. We go, before we submit them, we go over our post-season reports, what we did. We have meetings with chief and council. But it's broader than just, it's not one or two, it's interactions. It's actually being present and hearing and listening to the concerns of First Nations. And ultimately, all of us want to leave a positive legacy in the Yukon. That's what I would like to do, and a project that certainly benefits the First Nation of Nacho-Naik-Dun, the specific one, and the community of Mayo, and ultimately the Yukon.
Yeah, well, look, in general, if mining's not benefiting everyone, we got a problem. It needs to. It's about building a better future for people. Look, really appreciate everybody's input today. Absolute wonderful story. I think you're all on the cutting edge of opening up this district. You're all at different levels, but you and perhaps others soon are going to join you, are really going to unlock the new gold province of this region. Okay, so kudos to you. Best of luck to everyone. With that, I think we will call it a wrap.
Okay, thanks.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.